I've just been thinking about what are some, if you could think of one piece of of advice for interviews, based on some of the things that we've talked about already, or some of the things that if you've never had an interview before, what would that one piece of career advice be? Or interview advice, rather.
So it's a two-part answer. And I would say the first part is make sure your resume is straight.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Comes back to the resume.
It always comes back to the resume. And because the job market is so tight right now, one typo is going to cost you a job.
Sure.
Right? It's not even going to get you in the door.
Indeed.
And people are really tough about that. So that's part one. And part two, I cannot emphasize enough. Know the company you're interviewing for.
Sure.
CEOs, hiring managers, they want to hire people who are interested in doing what they are doing. And if you're coming in there and all you're looking for is a job and a paycheck and you don't care what it is, they're going to know that and you're not going to get the job.
Wow. So as an interviewer, what are some ways, and I know I have some ideas, and I think we could all talk about this. How do you convey that interest? Even so, let's say you are someone who, you know, I really just need a job, but you know that, okay, they've listened to this show and they're like, okay, well, I need to make sure that I at least project this interest in this company. What's an example of a way that someone could project that interest in an interview?
First, it can be in the cover letter, right? Write a short cover letter, even if that cover letter is just an email, right? You're sending your resume in and say, you know, this sounds like an amazing position at an incredible organization that does, and just have some tagline that's in their website, something that lets them know you actually are paying attention.
Sure.
And then when you do get that interview and you walk through the door, make sure that they know that, you know, when they ask you questions like, so, you know, let me think of a good interview question. So talk to me about some challenges that have shown up for you in your career, right? And how you have faced those challenges and how you have grown from them, right? It's one that I ask a lot.
Okay, that's a good one.
And, you know, when I answer that question, if I'm answering that question and I want to work here at WPPM, my answer is going to be about public speaking and how, you know, at some point in my career I had some challenges with public speaking, and so I took some courses and, you know, I went to some debate clubs and I did all of these things so that I could speak and bang into a mic.
It's showing, your experience is
Right,
showing.
it's showing, right? And, you know, and here's how that's going to help me at WPPM. You know, because I know that one of the things that you are committed to is working with people and getting the word out there. And my entire life mission is about doing just that thing.
You know, we speak a lot about the disruptive cover letter and basically tailoring your cover letter to either an experience you've had with the organization or a relationship you have with the products and or services that they provide.
Exactly.
And how does that translate on paper and how that makes people feel. So I think that's, you know, to what you're speaking of, like make the connection.
Right.
Always connect.
Exactly. And so it sounds like just to pull out some of the kind of information from the answer, it's applying your own experience to the place that you're working at, or to the place that you're seeking to work at. And so that takes preparation, right?
Yes.
And so in thinking about how, if you know that maybe you've never worked in this specific industry before, but you then have to, you talked about knowing your resume. So how do you prepare? You talked about mock interviews before, but is there another way that someone would be able to prepare to be able to translate those experiences that they have to the place that they're trying to work at?
I would say call a friend, right? That's the best advice. One of the other best pieces of advice I can give is call somebody and go, okay, so I just applied for a job at X, and X does this, and you know what I've done in my career. How can I make that work?
Right.
Because a lot of times we can't think that way, right? About ourselves. We can do it real easily for somebody else, right? And I do a lot of, on the side, I do a lot of helping people revamp their resumes.
Okay.
And one of the things that I tell people all the time is make your resume pop, right? Because, you know, I'm looking at 200 resumes a day, right?
Yeah.
And not something in there that makes me giggle or makes me go, huh, you know,
it's gonna get passed
you're
over.
gonna get passed up,
Yeah, sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, everybody's got a bachelor's degree, everybody's got a this, everybody's got the experience to do this, but how do you stand out, right? And whenever, you know, it happens so often that people say to me, so I don't know how to make myself pop. Well, what is it about me that makes me unique?
Right.
And I say, oh, tell me. You tell me. What is it about you that makes you unique?
You know, it's like when you see those resumes with multitasker and
Yes.
you know, active listener.
Good at Excel, at not Excel, because that's actually a skill, but like Microsoft Office.
Yeah,
Yes.
Just don't put that as a skill.
No.
Do not, please don't put that as a
Everybody,
skill.
I said I can pull out the next 10 resumes and show you that.
Right.
So give me something to separate you
From the pack.
from the pack. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing, and, you know, and call somebody, ask somebody. Ask the people who know you best. Ask the guy who serves you your coffee. What is it about me? Is there anything about me that you think is unique?
Yeah, I think you're really grouchy before you get your coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that can actually, and even if you say that, that's actually a point that you can have in a conversation and interview appropriately,
Yes.
right? At an
Yes.
appropriate time.
Absolutely.
When you're just trying to break the ice, when you're just trying, because part of what good interviewing is conveying who you are as a person.
Exactly.
Not just a walking version of your resume.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's a really, really important point. That I happen to work at a very sweet little nonprofit right now, and there's a lot of sci-fi when you wander through the office. A lot, right? There's Star Wars here, and this one's got a whole Star Wars desk, and we've got a Millennium Falcon. And
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
if you don't like Star Wars, you probably don't want to hang out in this office.
But
And
if you know that,
yes.
How do you
If
get
you
in
know
there?
that, right? Or, you know, if you had it, look, the CTO, when I interviewed him, he told me he'd written a sci-fi book, and I'm like, why isn't this on your resume? Right? And suddenly he stood out to me, and I said to him, I said, whether you get this job or not, put that on your resume.
yes,
Wow.
yes.
Make a point of putting that in. Now, we hired him because he was great, and
Sure.
I knew he would be the right fit. Part of the reason he's the right fit is because he speaks the language, right? Because if we're in there talking about Stargate and Star Trek and, you know, what's on the wall of the, you know, this was a conversation today in the office, what's on the wall of the Oracle and the Matrix, right? And if you don't know it's Temet Noske, then you can't hang
See,
out
it's
with
probably
him.
not the place for me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it might not be my place, but I respect that
Right,
there's a group
there's
of
a group
people.
of people that's like that.
Right.
Right, and that's the other thing that, you know, as we're talking about advice for people as they're interviewing, when you walk in, pay attention,
Yeah.
right? You walk in for that interview, pay attention. Is what is on the walls?
What does it look
Where,
like?
what does it
feel
look like? What does it feel like? You know, is it a disruptive place? Are there lots of baked goods in the kitchen? Are there, right, what kind of place are you walking into?
You know,
And that should give you things to speak about.
and there are so many tools today where you can leverage or identify that type of intel, whether it's Glassdoor or even on LinkedIn,
Yes.
where you can just get information about what an organization looks like internally without actually stepping in the doors yet.
Yes.
And so then maybe you don't get everything, but at least now you have a frame of reference. So when you come in the door, you can start looking for certain things. And I believe that's just extremely important. I think we tell people to do research prior to coming in to an interview. But I think sometimes that research is just so general. And I say, you know, leverage Glassdoor. Look at what other employees have to say, because you may find information that says, listen, very techy. Star Trek is huge in that office. That's the stuff that you might not see on the company website, but that information is out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is out there, it's true. And another way to do this same thing is when you're in the interview, make sure you ask. You know, there's usually a place in the interview where they ask you if you have any questions.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Yes.
Make sure that you ask the people who are interviewing you what they love about working there and why that place is interesting to them.
That's a good question.
Right, and then take what they give you and connect it.
Okay.
Right, and say, oh, you know, it's great that, oh, you love to bake, I love to bake too, and my wife actually just won a contest baking, and, you know, it would be great, oh, you guys do you do a baking contest every year? Oh,
Right.
that would be great, right? Connect yourself in with what you're told by the people who
You
you
know,
work with.
there's a career coach out there, and she speaks to that. She said, you know, the three things that she sees hiring managers basically make decisions on are aptitude, experience, and personality.
Absolutely.
But the personality piece, can I work 8 hours plus with you?
With this
Right.
person, right?
You know, are we part of the same tribe?
Absolutely.
And initially, when you think about it, you don't completely understand the importance of it, but it's really important to work with people that you like.
Right. And it doesn't mean that you have to work in a place where everybody looks like you or is exactly like you or
No.
likes the exact things.
No.
Because you don't want to become a cookie cutter, and maybe or unless you want to work for that kind of company, because there are those kinds of companies out there. But you want to be right. You want to be yourself and see how can you contribute to this environment.
Right.
And I think it's really important to. I think the biggest one of the biggest things that I'm hearing in a lot of your advice is to reflect yourself in the place that you're trying to work at.
Yes.
And so if you don't like baking, don't say, "Oh, I'm such a great baker," right? Because that's not what you want to do either. Because then you're going to get found out.
Yes.
And that actually happened to me in one of my first on-campus interviews when I was back when I was a young law student. I had listed it might have been football on my resume or something as an interest, which is true. And at the time, I wasn't fresh on the stats, or there was something that the interviewer asked me,
Right.
and I got exposed. I was not prepared to talk
Right.
about this thing in my interview. And now football is not listed as an interest. I actually don't even know if I have an interest section on my resume. I need to.
You weren't speaking about home runs in a football coach.
Of course not. I wasn't that far off now. Whatever. But she asked me a question. It might have been about the Giants, and I just wasn't wasn't quick on the uptake.
Okay.
And so I say that to say that if you have something on your resume, and you alluded to this point earlier, Erica, make sure you know how to talk about that thing. Because I've also seen it where it's the same thing happens where you put something on there, somebody asks you about it because they're like really into it too, and then you're just like crickets,
Right.
and then you look silly.
And here's the thing, a great interviewer will remember what you shared with them.
Right.
So this may come back around,
Right.
and, you know, like you may have a second interview
Right.
and they make mention of something, or you may even get hired.
Right.
And down the road,
I
they
really
say,
like
"Well,
that person, right?
Exactly.
That was
I had years ago. I was away for a couple of days, and I had this one CEO who used to just like to hire people randomly. So he brings in this guy, and I'm there. He's now been there almost a week, and I look at his resume, and on his resume it says two things. One, it says that he's fluent in Portuguese. So am I.
Yeah.
Two,
Oh
it
snap!
says that he worked for Coca-Cola. Well, my mentor worked for Coca-Cola.
This is
Okay.
about to get good.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm excited.
So
This story is getting really good.
Like, oh, hold on. Let me get something to drink.
Yeah, so I walk over, and introduce myself. Hi, I'm a human resources person, and I say, in Portuguese, hey, how's everything going? And he looks at me like, I have 16 heads.
Oh no!
Wow.
So I say it again, and he keeps looking at me kind of crazy. So then I say, in Portuguese, aren't you the one who speaks Portuguese? And he says, with that weird look on his face. So then I say in English, your resume says you speak Portuguese. And he says, not that kind.
Oh, wow.
So giving him the benefit of the doubt,
Right.
I decide, okay, he doesn't speak Brazilian Portuguese, he speaks Portugal's Portuguese. I got that too.
Oh my goodness! Here, of course you do.
Let's go upstairs. I have, I know one of my colleagues, so I call him up. Hey, Carla, can you do me a favor? Can you come down and, I need you to just kind of
Assess the situation.
Right. Do a little bang, won't you? So he comes over, walks over to the guy, starts talking to him in Portugal's Portuguese, and the guy gives him that same look. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So I walk into my office, I call my girl at Coca-Cola, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you look up, because I know you're a massive company, can you look up, nope. Are you sure? How about if I give you, maybe it's a different spelling. No.
Wow.
What about it a different, nope, I'm looking at HR for the whole West Coast.
Wow.
Okay, all right. So of course, doing my due diligence, I call his references, right? One's a friend, one's this,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
None of them are professional.
Right.
So I had to let him go. And, when I said to him, I said, don't put stuff on your resume that's not true. And he's like, who else speaks Portuguese?
Yeah.
And that's his response.
That's
Oh That's his defense.
Right?
No one was gonna fact check that.
Right. So to that, I say, be authentic.
Oh
Sure.
my goodness.
If it's on your resume, make sure you've done it.
Yeah.
Because someone is going to
Someone's
check.
gonna check.
Someone is going to check.
Oh
You know,
And you don't want to be caught out. by that.
No.
It's never cute.
I think you touched on something that I believe is the missing piece when people speak about foolproofing their career toolbox, the reference piece.
Yeah.
Any advice to our listeners, any advice to the career seekers out here on who should be your reference, how you should coach your references, any advice you can offer from your seat?
Sure. Know your references. That's the first thing, right? Don't just say, oh, I worked with this guy and so he can be my reference. Make sure that your references are people who are going to speak well of you, right? I've had it happen too often where I've called a reference and they've gone, oh God, you don't want to hire that guy.
Oh no. Do your due diligence. So many
Right.
themes coming back here
Right.
in this show today.
Yeah, know who is talking about you and know what they're saying, right? I've also had references tell me really amazing things about a candidate that the candidate didn't even tell me, right? That really propped them up in a way that I thought, wow, okay, these are untapped jewels
Sure.
about this candidate. Preferably, we like bosses. We like bosses to be references. If it can't be a boss for whatever reason, it should be someone who worked very closely with you, right? If you're just starting your career and you don't have a lot of that and you do use personal references, make them people who can speak to your ethics, right? People who have known you, church leaders, teachers, people who have known you in a way that will translate into a professional capacity.
Gotcha.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's another context. If you ever have to have a written letter of reference or recommendation, it's that same concept. Just thinking about my time as working in the law school, I've seen letters of recommendation that have actually said, and not very often, but that say, I do not recommend this person.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, how did you, either that person, the recommender, set you up and was just like, yeah, I'm gonna write you this great letter, I got you, I'm gonna take care of you. Or you exercised really poor judgment.
Right.
And so it goes back to a lot of the things that we're talking about today really go back to a very, like a thread of things. What's your judgment like?
Right.
Who you are as a person? What do you represent? And how do you connect with the people that you're with? And if you can't know that someone's not going to give you a good reference, then either they set you up or you just missed the ball there completely.
Right, absolutely.
Wow. It's the Career Seeker Show, live on WPPM FM 106.5 Philadelphia. We're here today having an excellent conversation with Erica Woods, Tiffany Southerland. Please check us out on the Facebook live stream. If you're watching, like it, share it, do what you do. You can catch at Tiff South on Twitter, at KL Johnson Info on Twitter. It's the Career Seeker Show. So, Erica, I know we've spoken a lot about interviews and things of that nature. You happen to dabble into sharing that you speak Portuguese. One of the things I admire most about you is the worldliness of your experience. Well, share with Tiff some of the places that you've actually lived.
So let's see, I lived in Germany when I was younger. I lived in India. It's actually where I met my husband.
That's
Shout out
so
to the man I
cool.
love. Yeah, I went all the way to India to meet a man from Cherry Hill,
I
New
might
Jersey.
need to
Wow.
Yeah.
travel somewhere then.
And I spent a lot of years living in Brazil.
Brazil? Can we just talk about Brazil?
Let's
for a
talk about
second?
Brazil.
Yeah.
I love me some Brazil. I've
Brazil's
only been
amazing.
there once, but
Where?
I was in Rio, so
Okay.
I guess the place where everybody goes, kind of. But it's a 10-year visa, I think, when you apply. So I'm gonna make it my business to get there. And I want to go to Bahia.
That's where I lived.
Well, oh my gosh, we have to talk. We're gonna talk about this off air. So in your travels, what did you notice anything different about your? Did you work or did
Yes,
you?
I did.
So in thinking about some of the other countries, are there things that that were different about the way that we kind of interact within our interview context as compared to here in the States?
India was really interesting. We had a moment where we were trying to hire a finance person, an accountant. And I sent out, put out an ad like you do, right? Get back resumes, all in English. It's very popular to put your picture on your resume.
Okay.
So lots of pictures, lots of 6, 10-page resumes with pictures of family and animals and the whole thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Animals?
Animals, yes.
Pets.
If you have animals, then they go on. If your family has oxen, they go on your
Resume. Interesting.
They eat a lot. I don't know.
I might be able to afford it.
And
Then you would need hence needing to get a job.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, there you go. Then you need a job. And it was always very interesting that I would call to set up these interviews, and the person on the line would speak very good English, and or speak English very well. I know my mother's listening. Speak English very well, and we'd get them into the office, and they'd bring a translator because they only spoke Hindi, and I'd say, but wait, English was a requirement for this job because it was the common language. We had 46 people, 35 different languages spoken.
Wow.
English was the common language in this office.
Oh my God.
And I said, everyone here must speak English. Oh, but I sat next to someone who spoke English once at a job. Doesn't that count?
Wow. Not
So,
exactly.
yeah, not exactly. So a lot of that, but it spoke to a level of confidence. I can do this job even if I don't have this qualification.
That's something to learn right there.
Right, which we don't do here
Sure.
a lot in the U.S., right? In the U.S., if you don't have the qualifications, most times you don't even apply. Right? In India, that doesn't happen as
Okay.
much. In Brazil, one of the things I loved about living in Bahia was that, things were very impromptu.
Okay.
Right, so I would have the idea that I was going to have an interview in an office, and then suddenly I'm in a hallway or on a balcony, and we're talking, and I was just like, wait, how did we get
This is an
here?
interview.
Wow.
Right.
Interesting.
Right, whereas like in Germany, there's a formula, and everything's very, very measured, right? And in the same way that we have the EEO that makes sure that we are asking the same questions, the Equal Opportunity Commission, making sure that we're asking the same questions of candidates for fairness and all of that, that isn't even something you have to consider in Germany. It's just done.
It's done.
Right. You just know that everything is going exactly the same way.
Okay.
And if there isn't, there's an ombudsman who's usually sitting there with HR in the room who makes sure that it's done. So it's a whole, there are different practices.
Interesting.
Right, but at the end of the day, it's all the same. Everybody wants a job.
Everyone wants a job, exactly, and companies want to hire the best people. So hopefully, just thinking about our conversation today, we touched on a lot of really, really good things and a lot of good insight, but it comes down to, I think, being prepared. Proper preparation will never steer you wrong, in any context, and knowing yourself as a candidate and as an employee, as a potential employee, what are the things that you have to offer, and how are you going to make sure you best convey that in an interview setting?
Excellent, excellent. So, Erica, how do our listeners connect with Erica Woods?
The easiest way is on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Right, that keeps it professional. I try not to connect with people who are job seeking or who I work with on any of the other social medias because there are things that are going to get said there that I don't want to.
Sure. Yeah. Whole nother show. We may bring you back for a show on social media as well.
Yes,
social media.
that's a really good one.
Big one.
Yes.
But LinkedIn, I'm Erica Yvette Woods, ERICA, and Yvette with a Y.
Okay.
Listen, we really appreciate you being here today.
It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Like
So
to,
great to have you.
yes, indeed. Like to thank, of course, Erica Woods. I'd also like to thank our listeners for checking in today. We do it every Wednesday, 4 to 5, on WPPM FM 106.5. You know what, Tiff? I was just thinking about this. Speaking about the social media piece. Erica, yeah, let's have you come back. Let's do that again. I'm just sitting here thinking about it. I'm like, we really need to make that happen. So, yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Cool.
We'll definitely do it. All right? That works for me. It's the Career Seeker Show live on WPPM FM. Tiff South, we did it again.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Thank you for listening to another episode this week, and we'll see you next week.
We got you, Philly. WPPM LP Philadelphia, 106.5. Thank you.